There were a lot of people this year that were disappointed with the Alabama Crimson Tide. And here's the thing, they're adjusting to a new offense. Jalen Milroe had gotten used to playing one way and needed to change up his play a little bit and wasn't quite able to do it to the standards of a Saban era team. Notice I said Saban era. Kalen DeBoer has brought in somebody new. That's not a bad thing. I mean, it happens. They lost a few more games than normal. There were three games that were very unexpected for them to lose, and one that, hey, even the great Bear Bryant made comments about losing in Neyland Stadium. If you don't believe me, you should go back and research the man. So we're going to go over the record, and then we're going to take a look at what this past year was like for them by the numbers. We're not going to get into the emotional part of it. We're just going to get into the numbers. So stick around and let's go. Hey folks, this is Paul with Redneck Sports. I want to thank you for viewing my video, and I want to give you one thought process. There was a famous coach at University of Tennessee by the name of General Robert Neyland. He had 6 maxims, but number 2 maxim is what everybody should apply to their life. Play for and make the breaks. When one comes your way, score. That's how to live your life right there. Okay, so they started out the season really well. Brutalized Western Kentucky. South Florida started out a little rough, but they picked it up and beat them very extremely convincingly. Wisconsin, they beat even more. Georgia, they were able to beat when Georgia came to visit them at Bryant Dennehy Stadium. Then they had an unexpected loss at Vandy. Now, Vandy was a good team this year, but this exceedingly unusual. I mean, the last time they had beat Vandy was or they had been beaten by Vandy was in like 1984. And Vandy had never beat a number one team before. They were the number one team, and well, yeah. And it wasn't even so much that Milroe wasn't throwing like his normal self, but just things didn't go well. They then went and beat South Carolina, but that was a really close game. Lost to Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. Like I said, you should read up on what Bear Bryant had to say about Neyland Stadium. Brutalized Missouri, won a really convincing game in Death Valley against LSU, brutalized Mercer, but then they lost to Oklahoma in a stunningly bad fashion when they might have had a chance to get into the playoffs. And then they beat Auburn in Bryant Dennehy, but not quite as good as most people thought they'd be able to. And then they go to the ReliaQuest Bowl and get stunned by an unranked Michigan. This was an up and down season, and them losing 4 games, yeah, none of this was a good thing for them. At least they were able to beat Auburn. They had a good enough season to for everybody to think, oh, they should still be a top 10 team next year. But it just wasn't what people expected. But like I said, that's because new offensive scheme. So let's get a look at this offense. Since Jalen Milroe is most likely not going to be back, I'm not going to cover him in a separate part, but he passed for 2,844 yards, which is respectable. He had a 64.3% completion ratio. He was also the leading rusher with 726 yards. He threw for 16 touchdowns, but had 11 interceptions. That was way off. That was exceedingly way off. Uh, Now his rushing, there we go. He had 20 touchdowns by rushing. This is something that you saw in Army and Navy. This should not have been an Alabama offense. If I mean, I might be wrong, but you tell me. Ryan Williams. By the way, did you know that Ryan Williams wasn't 18 when he started playing for the University of Alabama? Ryan Williams had 48 receptions, 865 yards, 8 touchdowns. That was another bright spot for the team. Now, rushing wise, Jam Miller also had 7 rushing touchdowns. So did Justice Haynes had 7 rushing touchdowns. Richard Young had 2. Ryan Williams had 2 rushing touchdowns. Uh, Daniel Hill had a touchdown. Ty Simpson, Jeremy Bernard, they all had touchdowns. There were 41 rushing touchdowns this year. They had 17 receiving touchdowns. Ryan Williams had the 8. By the way, you did know that he wasn't 18 when he was playing, right? Jeremy Bernard had 2. Josh Cuevas had 1. Jam Miller had 1. Kobe Prentice had 1. Robbie Outs had 2. And just Hendrick Law had 1. And then Rico Scott had 1. It was an okay offense. I mean, you look at the numbers. When you're, like I said, they had like a Naval Academy or West Point offense going. They didn't have a offense that really was a normal Alabama or even an SEC offense. And then throw on the fact that Jalen Milroe having 11 interceptions, he was sacked 23 times. Yeah, the offense just was not what you would expect. So let's take a look at the defense now. Now, tackles, Jahad Campbell had 119 tackles. Bray Hubbard had 3 interceptions. Um, there were overall there were 17 interceptions. None of them returned for a touchdown from the interception. Uh, they had a pretty decent, when you're taking a look at the tackles, the defense was a Alabama defense, except that there were certain teams that they weren't able to hold quite right. This wasn't a bad defense at all. You would have expected it to be able to be a little bit better because it was Alabama, but with the new NIL rules and everything, some of the folks that could have stepped up just weren't there. You take a look at Devontae Lawson and Malachi Moore, along with Jahad Campbell that I talked about earlier, Justin Jefferson, Bray Hubbard, and Damani Jackson all had over 50 tackles on the year. Sacks wise, Jahad Campbell had 5. Uh, that he was the best person when it came to sacks. Sorry, not tackles, sacks. I mean, but they were more spread out. Unlike other teams, they were far more spread out, but not to that amount. They couldn't get to the quarterback. That is something that they are probably going to work on. Them unable to get to the quarterback. Yes, they had more people getting to it. Quay Robinson, sorry, had 4 sacks. So as you can tell, this was a good, not a Saban level or even a Bear Bryant level defense, but it was a good defense. It was salvageable. They kept them in games when they may not have been able to stay in the game. Just, I don't know if it was so much that they were switching over. I just think that they were needing a little bit more experience in some spots. I think that was their biggest problem is that they didn't have the experience they needed to have. Now, coming up this next year, they start out against they go to Florida State. So this is a game nobody knows what Florida State's going to be when they get there next year. They've retooled after everything. Then they go, so it should be a win. But considering how the season ended, nobody knows. But it should be a win. Then they play UL Monroe, should be a win. Wisconsin, not that big of a change in a Wisconsin team, so they should be able to win that one. They're going between the hedges to play at Georgia. This may not be the game that it was last year. Then Bandy comes to them, and let me tell you, Kalen DeBoer has probably already heard everything that can be said about that loss, and he will probably make sure or do his best to make sure that Clark Lee does not beat them in Bryant Dennehy Stadium. Then they go to Missouri. Should be a win. Then Tennessee comes to them. Now, as a Tennessee fan, as somebody that follows Tennessee really closely, I don't know what Tennessee they're going to get. I can't predict that game. The Georgia and Tennessee, I don't know what they're going to get. South Carolina, they're going to South Carolina. That could be a difficult game for them. LSU's coming to them. They should be able to beat LSU. Oklahoma's coming to them. They will want payback. Then they've got Eastern Illinois, a nice refresher game. And then Auburn. Auburn, Hugh Freeze is on the hot seat. If Hugh Freeze is not able to do something next year, that could be his final game coaching Auburn. Everybody might shout, "Go War Eagle." Well, yeah, they might be shouting, "Go away, Freeze," next year with this game. So this game, yeah, it really, really matters. So Auburn will probably be in fighting spirits on this one. So that's their season coming up. I mean, after this 2024 season, I can't imagine that anybody that has the ear of Kalen DeBoer has not already made sure that he doesn't know what is expected of him and how badly that their season looked to them. I mean, you're talking about a team that is used to competing for the national championship, and it was open to 12 teams and they weren't able to get in there. 9-4 is not a normal Alabama team. And I don't dislike Alabama. I even root for them on occasion, but yeah, this is not the Alabama this is the Alabama from before Saban got there. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember those times, but this is that Alabama. I don't think DeBoer will stick around many years if he's doing a Gene Stallings kind of record. They're going to be they're going to have a come down before they would expect 9-4 to be a good year. I've heard so. This has been Paul with Redneck Sports. So y'all have a good day. Bye. I want to thank you for watching my video. And if you like what you saw, like, subscribe, and comment. Y'all have a good day now.